This has always been a nation on the move, shaped by waves of immigrants from around the world. Religious believers, socialist dreamers, and Holocaust survivors, refugees from Muslim lands, and a fair number of newcomers from North and South America, and even as far off as Australia. They turned their biblical promised land into modern Israel.
It's called the Jewish state, but when you take into account the variety of cultural, national, and ethnic backgrounds from which these people come, and the fact that many of them aren't even Jewish, it quickly becomes clear that describing the character of Israel is no simple matter.
Start with the fact that some 20% of Israelis are Muslims, Christians, and other minorities. Take into account the recent arrival of more than 1 million new immigrants from the former Soviet Union and almost the entire Jewish population of Ethiopia. It's enough to make a social scientist's head spin. Even one like Israel's leading demographer, who came here from Italy.
It's a lively mosaic and never a dull moment. So on one hand, you have, in fact, a highly functional Israeli society. On the other hand, there are certain unsolved problems, mostly at the kind of ideological, ideal point of view. What is Israel? What is the nature of the state of Israel?
It may take several generations to answer those questions. Meanwhile, each wave of newcomers faces its own challenges. Those who came from the villages of rural Ethiopia find the transition to modern life especially difficult, reflected in about 50% unemployment and frequent domestic problems. While their children learn to fit in, many of the parents are left behind. On the other hand, beginning in the late 1980s, immigrants from the former Soviet Union arrived in Israel in such great numbers, with so much purchasing power, that they were able to carve out their own niche. In their neighborhoods, Russian signs and tastes abound.
All the products in the store come from Ukraine and Russia. The people who come in here see goods they're familiar with, and that's what they want to buy.
That includes non-kosher products like pork and seafood that Russians love, and many Israelis forgo for religious reasons. That's just one aspect of the culture clash.
We don't shout. We try to behave ourselves.
Tova Grushko came to Israel from Russia as a high school student. Now she's doing graduate work in marine biology. For her, the transition to Israeli life has gone smoothly. Less so for her parents. While they found nice lodgings in the seaside town of Ashdod, they found it impossible to pick up the pieces of their lives. In Russia, her father was a successful civil engineer. In Israel, he could only find factory work. Tova's mother was a Russian language teacher. In Israel, she ended up working in a commercial laundry and learning one of the most important words in Hebrew. You need to have patience. That's a word I've learned quite well. Whatever moving to Israel took away from them, it gave them something they couldn't find in Russia: the ability to openly revel in being Jewish, with no fear of anti-Semitism. In return, Russian mass immigration provided Israel with a source of new energy.
A huge influx of highly qualified human capital, a resource of exceptionally high value that helped Israel undertaking what I would call the big leap forward in its economy and infrastructure, which happened basically during the 1990s.
Something else happened in the 1990s. Growing unrest prevented Palestinians who once provided a source of cheap labor from continuing to work in Israel. In their place, non-Jews began arriving, often illegally, from other parts of the world. Many of them inhabit this rundown neighborhood in South Tel Aviv.
You have Chinese, you have Nepalese, Filipinos, Burma.
Eli Penso's mini-market offers them an impressive selection of Eastern delicacies.
We accept them, of course. We are trying to help them.
Recently, many of the new arrivals have been refugees from Africa, many of them fleeing the bloodshed in Darfur.
I'm Muslim. I'm from Islamic country, and we're facing genocide from our own Muslims.
Like the Israelites of old, Yassin Musa and other Darfurian refugees trek across the desert from Egypt, risking their lives to make it into Israel. Most are arrested upon arrival, spending months in jail. Yassin established an organization to lobby for their rights and a shelter where they spend their first days of freedom. He says Israeli citizens, if not the government, have rallied to his cause.
I read about Jewish history when I was in high school, about the genocide, the Holocaust. They feel these things inside them.
If there is a real melting pot in Israel, this is it. Being in the army is light years away from what many immigrants to Israel would be doing back home. Yet ironically, here it's something most of them want to do.
It turns me into an Israeli. When I put on a uniform, I become part of the state of Israel.
Leaving one country to settle in another is something most of us will never experience. It'll take years to understand how the arrival of so many newcomers affects the character of Israeli society. But it's already clear that this nation of immigrants, much like America, has a knack for making all sorts of people feel at home. This is Michael Greenspan, reporting for World Focus in Israel.